just gonna take a few moments to settle and to see who jumps on. And I have the company of this incredible red rose, and I'm gonna take some breaths in of her fragrance as a way for me to really come into my body and to share from my heart, and to share from my heart today about the rose, and to share her medicine with you as it expresses through my unique being and my heart and the love affair that I have with her. And so if you're here and you like to listen in, just invite you to breathe with me and to imagine that as you breathe in, that you're also able to breathe in her fragrance. And I can assure you that this particular beauty is incredibly sweet in her fragrance. Taking in the kind of breath that actually inspires you to drink in of this sweet fragrance. And even if for you right now it's an imagined fragrance, just noticing that you can awaken these subtle senses that you have available to you with your imagination, with your intention. And something really sweet that I've learned about roses recently, and I've been going deep with her and learning everything that I possibly can. And that includes both researching about the rose and then most importantly being her apprentice and spending a lot of time with roses, both when they're growing at the gardens and also the roses that come home with me. And I'll share with you a little bit in this video about the way that I commune with the rose and the rituals that that are part of my life, that enrich my life so deeply. And and I'm brand new to doing live videos, so just want to share with you that I'm feeling very, very vulnerable, and yet there's also this really sincere inspiration arising within me to speak to this connection that I hold as so sacred. And there's a little something that I discovered recently, and I discovered it completely by accident. Of course, nothing's an accident, completely by grace. And I was wanting to read a book, revisit a book that I read many years ago called The Red Tent, and some of you will know it. I was about to start bleeding, and I was really inspired to read this story. I had a feeling that it was going to be exactly what I needed. And so I used the search function on my Kindle. I have probably about 100 books. I love to read. And I had about 5 books that had the title, or that included in their title the word red, and the color red. And those who know me are, I have a complete obsession and strong connection with the color red. So I had 5 books that included the word red in their title. And then I realized that one of the books that came up in my search was this book called Sacred Sexual Union. And I was like, oh my goodness, there it was, the word red contained within the word sacred. And this was completely, this for some reason it excited me so much to discover that the word sacred contained the word red. It felt like I was suddenly let in on this secret, and it brought me so much delight to discover, because the journey that I'm about to share with a group of women in Brisbane is called the Temple of the Sacred Rose, and we're specifically journeying with the spirit and the energy and the medicine of the red rose, which is the rose that I feel most connected with. So I want to share a little bit more about the unique medicine of the red rose, but also, as I promised, to share with you about my own rituals and the way that I commune with her. And I mean, I share that example with you about discovering this hidden word within the word sacred. And it's the kind of thing that it had been right there in front of my eyes, you know, forever. And I'd never noticed it. And yet, of course, there is so much that that we don't see until we see it, right? And, you know, it's what I call a revelation. And as I've been connecting more and more deeply with the red rose and the wisdom of the rose, what continues to happen is this revelation, this revealing of wisdom through this connection where it's like there's so much that I'm suddenly seeing, there's so much that is coming through because I'm simply making myself available and creating that space to receive what she has to give. And she has so much to give and so much to reveal. So this particular red rose here, I picked at the rose farm, and late last year, I think it was, a rose farm opened up in my neighborhood. And this is like one of those dreams come true that I didn't even know it was a dream that I had. And then, you know, this rose farm opening has brought so much joy to my life. And so, I have befriended the beautiful man who runs this rose farm. And if you're in Brisbane, it's the Brookfield Rose Farm. And I've sent so many people his way. And I've made this weekly ritual out of visiting the rose farm. And so part of my intention when I engage with this ritual, and whether you have, you know, a rose bush on your property or in your neighborhood, or, you know, roses grow pretty much everywhere in the world. I'm sure there are exceptions like Antarctica, but this is part of the magic and the beauty of the rose, is that the rose is incredibly ancient. So I recently discovered that roses, there are like fossils of roses from like 35 million years ago. So that's pretty ancient. And roses are known to grow pretty much everywhere. You know, there are a few exceptions, but almost all over the world, roses grow. And why this feels really significant to me, and why this really moves me, is that this means that, you know, as far back as time goes on Earth, and in our ancestry, that women throughout our lineage will have had a connection with the rose, no doubt. You know, they will have tended to roses, gathered roses, breathed in their scent, you know. So part of this lineage of the rose, I really feel strongly it includes our grandmothers, our great-grandmothers, their grandmothers, their great-grandmothers, and women specifically, you know, we could call them priestesses of the rose, who have really devoted themselves to knowing and transmitting the mysteries and the wisdom and the medicine of the rose. So there's this whole lineage and ancient connection that exists, and the roses that exist today, they really carry that transmission of that, of all of that wisdom. I consider the rose to be a wisdom keeper. And I think I titled this video that the rose is a mystery school. And when we connect in with her, as I shared, she has so much to reveal. And the ways that I like to connect with her, of course, first and foremost, is through my embodiment, through the absolute blessing that I have of my 5 senses. So when I go to the rose farm to connect with the roses, and if you choose to explore this for yourself, you know, I go with the intention to make myself fully available to receive her beauty through my eyes, to take in the shades and the folds and the shapes. And then of course they're also fragrance. And so most cut roses that you buy at the supermarket or the florist even don't have a fragrance. So the roses that I connect with at this rose farm, many of them are fragrant roses. And so as I invited us into in the very beginning, when we have available the fragrance of the rose, it inspires a deeper breath. It's an opportunity to really imbibe of the medicine, the nectar, the sweetness of the rose. And we know that through our olfactory sense that it literally alters our brain, it alters our consciousness. And I often speak about being kind of like rose drunk, or there's that being intoxicated by the scent of the rose, by the beauty of the rose. And this kind of intoxication, it's not like when you're drunk and you're all kind of, your senses are a little bit blurry. It's actually, for me, the rose opens our senses, it opens our heart, it opens our eyes to really see the truth of things, which is beauty at its essence. And so, enjoying the beauty of a rose, it goes deeper than just enjoying the beauty of the rose. When this becomes a practice, as it is for me, it actually opens me to beauty in all things. And that is part of the medicine of the rose. Beauty is a truth rather than, a superficial something that we only take in through the visual sense. It goes deeper and deeper and deeper. So through the senses, through the gaze, through the eyes, through the scent, through the touch, there's something that inspires that softening in us when we allow ourselves to be touched by a rose, or when we can touch a rose with this tenderness, with this, beautiful reverence. You can't manhandle a rose, right? It has to be this really sweet, delicate way of connecting in. And then we can hear the rose, we can listen in, again, more through that deeper sense of listening, where we are in her presence. And again, this applies in your imagination. You don't have to have an actual rose with you. You can tune into, and a lot of the meditations that I guide, it's like imagining the heart or the womb as a rose, and kind of listening in and making ourselves available with the rose as our portal to that ancient lineage of women's wisdom that the rose can invite us into. So we have, through that sense of listening, of deep listening and making ourselves available. And there's another sense that I've forgotten. So I've spoken to the seeing of the rose, the taking in the beauty. Oh, the tasting, of course. Tasting the rose. Not all roses are edible, so I do want to preempt that. There are some beautiful rose teas that you can find, and rose chocolates is a particularly good combination. I love to put rose water in my cacao, so you can buy rose water at even at the supermarket these days, or it's like a more Mediterranean brand that I buy, so you can sometimes get it at at Asian supermarkets even. So then we have, of course, the sense of taste. So those are some of the ways that we can, in just a really tangible way, open up to receiving. And there's one other thing I want to speak about in this video. So now that I've dropped in and relaxed into this live video, I'll probably be unstoppable. So when I spend time at the rose farm, I also tune in to notice which roses are wanting to come home with me. It's quite a romantic little dance that happens, this tuning in and noticing where there's that magnetism. And sometimes my mind will be like, oh, that one's really beautiful, I should take that one home. Well, that one's got a little bit of a taint on the outer petals. But once I, you know, bypass my mind, there's a knowing, and then I can, and then I pick those roses and bring them home. And so the ritual for me really continues through the week. So when I bring the roses home and, place them around my home, I have that same invitation in my home environment to be able to connect back into that beauty, to that fragrance, to that touch. And when I pick the roses, I often pick them when they are buds. And so there's a beautiful song that I was playing at the start of this video. It's called Rose Lineage by Maria Stark. And the first line is that a rose blooms when she is ready and not a moment too soon. And part of the teachings and the wisdom of the rose, and especially the red rose, is the wisdom of our cycles. So, we live in a world where there's this emphasis on the blossoming, on the outward expression of our beauty, on the being seen, on being open, on being open-hearted, right? And what this perspective overlooks or denies us the opportunity of is to completely honor and relish also the other phases of our cycles. And these cycles apply to, of course, our menstrual cycles, especially with the red rose. We're connecting in with our blood. The cycles, of course, of the moon, the cycles of our life. We're always moving through cycles, especially as women. And the blossoming phase is akin to our ovulation, the full moon, maybe the mother archetype, for example. So, there's this, obviously there's beauty in the blossoming, and, everybody loves a rose in bloom. But the truth is that there is just as much sacredness in her budding. And in fact, there's this sense of promise, of possibility in her budding, and you never quite know what she's going to look like when she opens. And this particular rose, for example, I picked her when she was a bud, about a week ago. And so I've been witnessing her unfurling. And invariably, the next thing that's going to happen, and she's on the brink of doing this, is that she's going to shed. She's going to drop her petals. And depending on the variety of rose, I've noticed some roses, rather than dropping their petals, they might kind of wither and droop, or I've had these miracle roses on the Mary Magdalene altar behind me, where they've literally sat on the altar for weeks and retained their shape, and then I've gone and dried them and allowed them to stay in their form. But these roses, I've noticed, drop their petals, and there's something incredibly something really stirs in me when I am with the rose dropping her petals. And because my house is always filled with them, it's, it happens fairly often that I'll just be sitting and doing something, and I'll kind of hear the petals landing, and then I'll kind of feel something in me. It's like, oh, this sweet surrender, this release, this letting go. And this is really like the death phase of the cycle of the rose. So, there might be an assumption that to journey with the rose, on the surface level, it's all about beauty and, Aphrodite and fragrance and loveliness. But to really go deeper with the rose really includes a full embrace of all the phases of our cycles. And that means, on the soul level, our budding, our blossoming, our withering and our letting go and our death, and the phases where there has to be a release, a letting go. And then that of course makes way for the new cycle. And so I really want to honor as well the letting go, the beauty of the withering, which you could say it's more moving into the crone phase, for example, of a woman's life. And the rose wisdom really is feminine wisdom, and she of course has this spiraling nature as she begins to open, we can really see her spiral. So there's no like distinct beginning and end. It's not like we're aiming to blossom and then we're done. It's like, no, it's like every phase of the cycle is sacred and holy, and to be really honored. So I'm just going to allow a couple of moments. If anyone wants to drop into the comments, I've seen a few, but I have just been giving myself the permission to stay in my flow, or to find my flow. As I shared, live videos are brand new for me, and just allowing for that imperfection, and to let myself have a bit of fun with this, and to create the opportunity to connect in more real and authentic ways, which is really what I'm about anyway. So I've had the great blessing of being inspired to share this 5-week journey in Brisbane that starts next week, which is the Temple of the Sacred Rose, the Sacred Rose. And now you're never going to be able to look at the word sacred again, now that I've revealed to you that secret word within the word. And so what I've noticed in creating this space, even though it hasn't officially begun, but of course it began, that seed was planted. And as soon as I put it out there, the rose I've been deepening with the rose. She's been deepening with me, revealing more and more. So I'm just really feeling a lot of gratitude and a deepening reverence for this wisdom, and also a great curiosity as to how it's going to move through during this journey. And I really want to invite in any women who also feel this call to deepen with the rose in this way, to join in. We start next Wednesday night. It'll be 5 Wednesday nights across 5 weeks in June in Paddington and Brisbane. And we're also going to be taking, speaking of the taste element, the rose flower essence, the red rose flower essence, that beautiful flower priestess in Byron Bay has created just for us. So that's going to allow us on that vibrational level to really commune with that medicine of the rose. And she connects with every woman in a completely unique way. So there are, of course, these universal themes and ways that she weaves with us, the beauty way, the path of love, and, the sacred feminine. But within that, there's everything. So she's going to speak to and reveal herself to every woman in a completely different way. So that feels really exciting for me as well. Thank you so much for tuning in, and rose blessings to all of you. So much love.